Merry Christmas. I hope you're having an amazing holiday season. Today, I'm just going to be reading some nice classic Christmas stories to help you relax and hopefully fall asleep. To begin with, I have a nice story, a classic one. 'Twas the Night Before Christmas by Clement Clark Moore. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas would soon be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprung from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave the luster of midday to the objects below, when what to my wondering eye should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver, so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called him by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blixen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet an obstacle mount to the sky. So up to the housetop their coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down this chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys was flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn with like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke had encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know that I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprung to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like a down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." I always loved that story. Okay, next we have a story called The Elves and the Shoemaker by the Brothers Grimm. One day a poor shoemaker, without his wrongdoing, just barely had enough leather to make one more pair of shoes. In the evening he cut the leather so he could make the shoes in the morning and went to bed. But to his amazement, he found 2 finished shoes on his working table the next morning. Confused, he stared at the shoes and saw that they were made with great precision and care. A little while later, a customer came to his store and wanted to try the shoes. He walked around for a bit and was very satisfied. He was so satisfied that he paid much more for the shoes than was custom. With that money, the shoemaker could buy enough leather for 2 pairs of shoes. That evening, he got the leather so he could make the shoes in the morning, but when he woke up, the shoes were already done. A couple of hours later, he had sold the shoes and had enough money to buy leather for 4 pairs of shoes. And again the next morning, he found 4 pairs of perfect shoes. This went on for a while. All the leather he cut in the evening, by morning magically was a perfect pair of shoes. And soon the shoemaker was not poor anymore and lived a prosperous life. One night, just before Christmas, when the man had cut the leather, he said to his wife, "Shall we stay up and see who helps us?" His wife thought it was a good idea, and they hid in the corner of the room. At midnight, 2 beautiful little naked men appeared. They sat down on the working table and made the shoes. When the work was done, they quickly ran away. The next morning, his wife said, "Those little men have brought us such great prosperity. Let's show them how grateful we are. They must be cold without clothes. I shall make them some shirts, sweaters, jackets, pants, and socks. And you can make them a pair of tiny shoes. They'll be nice and warm on Christmas." No sooner said than done. They laid the presents on the table and hid in the corner again, so they could see their reaction. At midnight, the men entered the room. They wanted to start working, but instead of leather, they only saw presents. At first they were surprised, but soon they were overjoyed. They quickly put on the clothes and sang, "Now we are boys so fine to see, why should we longer cobblers be?" They danced and jumped over the chairs and sofas. When they were done dancing, they disappeared out the door. Nobody had ever heard from them again. What we do know is that the shoemaker and his wife lived happily ever after. What a precious little story. Okay, so for our 3rd story, I'd like to read A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, but a much shorter version. Once upon a time, there was a businessman. His name was Ebenezer Scrooge. He was not a friendly man. He was very rich, but never spent it. You could say that he was very stingy. It was almost Christmas, but Scrooge didn't want to have anything to do with it. Nonsense, was his opinion. He had asked his bookkeeper, Bob Cratchit, to work on Christmas Eve. Together, they went through all the finances of the year until Scrooge finally let the poor man go home to his family around midnight. Then he left the office to go home himself. That evening, Scrooge got a visitor. It was his cousin Fred. "Uncle, come to our house for Christmas dinner," asked Fred. "Oh, what rubbish," answered Scrooge. "I hate Christmas." And that's how Scrooge, heartless, sent his nephew back into the cold. He was a tough one, this Scrooge. Even collectors for the poor were mercilessly sent away by Scrooge. "Work for your money. I do," he yelled. And even worse, he yelled after the collectors, the more poor people die, the better for the problem of overpopulation. That night, something remarkable happened. In his dream, Scrooge got a visit from his deceased business partner, Marley. "If you continue like this, you will haunt this earth forever, just like me, and will always be reminded of how poorly you treated others," warned Marley. He told him that he would have 3 spirits visit him who can help him be spared from this awful fate. And that's what happened that night. Scrooge was awoken by the first ghost shortly after midnight. "I am the ghost of Christmas past," said the ghost. "What are you here for?" asked Scrooge. "I want to show you memories. They are from a long time ago. You might not remember them so well. I am here to refresh your memory," said the ghost. Scrooge saw images from his past, like when he was left lonely and abandoned by his father at his strict boarding school. He also saw the love of his life, who he lost because he spent too much time doing business. Finally, he saw his deceased sister, who had always been kind to him. "Stop it," begged the Scrooge. "I can't bear this. The ghost disappeared. An hour later, Scrooge was woken up again. It was still slightly after midnight. The second ghost appeared, the ghost of Christmas present. Scrooge sighed. "And what are you doing here?" he asked. "I want to show you your loyal bookkeeper, Bob Cratchit. He has a tough life. He has a son. His name is Tiny Tim, who is very ill. They can't afford his medicine. You don't pay him enough for all the work that he does. It is very possible that Tiny Tim will pass away too soon." The images touched Scrooge. There was a tear streaming down his face. When the ghost saw it, he said, "What a strange reaction. His death would be a good solution to overpopulation, right?" And for the first time in ages, Scrooge felt regret. Regret over what he had said about the poor, and regret about how he had treated his loyal bookkeeper. The ghost said farewell, and the third ghost appeared, the ghost of Christmas future. "What can I do for you?" asked Scrooge, who was overwhelmed by his feelings that he had suppressed for a long time and had been awoken by the visits of the previous ghosts. His experiences from the past had made him a tough man, but the memories had sparked something in him. He started to regret his behavior more and more. This ghost showed him images of his grave with no visitors, and he got even sadder. It got even worse when the ghost showed him the next Christmas without Tiny Tim. The sadness of the Cratchit family touched him. He became very ashamed and wished he could be as gentle and generous as when he was born. That's when Scrooge decided to change. He ordered a turkey at the butcher and had it delivered at the Cratchit family, twice the size of Tiny Tim, and they enjoyed it so much. Of course, he gave Bob a raise. Then Scrooge went to the poorhouse, where he personally apologized to the collectors and gave them a large amount of money. And that's how it happened, that the cruel businessman changed into a kind and warm man. He accepted his nephew's invitation to spend Christmas with his family and had a lovely time. Scrooge became like a second father to Tiny Tim. Not only did he give the boy a lot of things, what was more important, he loved the boy. I love the Scrooge story, more or less the long story, especially. Always nice growing up to listen to. And so, for our fourth and final story, I'll be reading The Nutcracker and the Mouse King by Hoffman. It was Christmas Eve, and Maria and her brother Frederick were playing together in their playroom. They weren't allowed downstairs as their parents were preparing a big Christmas feast and party. They were looking forward for their godfather, Dr. Drosselmeyer, to arrive. Drosselmeyer was a peculiar man with a great gift. He could make and repair all kinds of machines. He especially loved clocks. Maria heard the doorbell ring. "Oh, Frederick, he is here. I wonder what he brought for us this time." Once he brought a little doll with moving eyes. Another time he brought a box with a dancer inside. The children ran downstairs and saw a beautiful fir tree decorated with all kinds of delicious chocolates. The table was filled with turkey, bread, potatoes, and cakes, and there were lights and decorations all around the house, and they saw presents under the tree. Maria instantly took a liking to a beautiful, painted wooden doll. He looked a bit like a soldier. He had beautiful, shiny black shoes, blue trousers, and a red coat with gold buttons. He looked brave and kind. "Dr. Drosselmeyer, what is that doll?" she asked. "That is a Nutcracker, my dear, and since you like him so much, he will be in your care tonight." Maria was delighted and brought the Nutcracker to the table, and together with her father, they cracked some nuts. Frederick became jealous and ripped the Nutcracker from her hands and started cracking nuts with it. But he was rough, and the jaw of the Nutcracker came loose. "No, Frederick," Maria cried, and quickly took the Nutcracker from him. She gently wrapped a ribbon from her hair around his jaw and held him tight. She went to their playroom and nudged Fred's soldiers aside. Maria put the Nutcracker in the bed of her beloved doll Clara. "Clara, take care of this wounded soldier while I sleep." Suddenly, the clock in the playroom started making strange noises. It started winding round and around and around and round. Maria got scared. She started to hear the trampling of hundreds of little feet in the walls and the chimney. She heard high-pitched squeaking all around her. Hundreds of mice appeared before her. They were led one by one. They were led by one big, scary-looking mouse, the Mouse King. Maria fell back from fear and knocked over her dollhouse. She hurt her arm badly in the fall and grabbed it, crying. All became silent. Maria was scared and confused. Then she heard a noise behind her. The Nutcracker had gotten out of bed and said, "My brave soldiers, dolls, stuffed animals, dragons, horses, and other toys here. Will you fight this mice army with me?" "Yes, we will," yelled the toys. "My dear, you are wounded. How will you fight?" said Clara the doll. "We will do it together," answered the Nutcracker. The drummer beat his drum and they started marching. The Nutcracker spoke inspirational words and lined everybody up. The mice started to fire. Maria was lost in the dust and smoke. The Nutcracker's army fought bravely, but the mice got closer and closer. More toys started falling down left and right, and finally the Nutcracker was the last one standing, surrounded by mice. The Mouse King ordered his soldiers to grab him. "No, not my sweet Nutcracker," screamed Maria, who saw us all unfold, and threw her shoe as hard as she could towards the Mouse King. Then she felt a sharp pain in her arm and she fainted. Maria woke up from a long, deep sleep. Next to her bed, she saw her mother and a doctor. "Oh, Mother, are the mice gone? Where's the Nutcracker?" Maria cried. "You foolish child," said her mother. "You gave us such a scare. You played with your new toys until late in the night instead of going to bed. A mouse must have scared you and you fell into your dollhouse, breaking your arm. I found you at midnight, unconscious on the floor, surrounded by broken toys." "No, Mother, there was a battle between the mice army and the Nutcracker and the toys. They took him." "Maria, your Nutcracker is safe in your playroom. Now rest," said her mother. And so for the next few days, Maria lay in bed thinking about what had happened. Nobody believed the girl when she tried to explain what had happened, so she stopped trying. Then one night she heard squeaking again and saw the Mouse King right next to her bed. "Give me your Christmas chocolates or I'll bite the Nutcracker," the Mouse King said. Maria was terrified, but she knew nobody would believe her, so the next evening she put all her chocolates on a plate near the bed in hopes of saving her Nutcracker. The Mouse King ate it all, but came back again the next night. "Give me your Christmas cookies or I'll eat your Nutcracker," he said, and he came back every night. Maria was sad and talked to her Nutcracker. "Oh, Nutcracker, I want to save you, but I don't have much left to give the Mouse King." Suddenly she felt the Nutcracker become warm and started moving in her hands. She put him on the table and said, "My dear friend, you have helped me so much already. Get me a sword and I will fight the Mouse King." So she took one of Frederick's toy swords and gave it to the Nutcracker. That night, Maria lay awake anxiously, and indeed she heard squeaking again. Terrified she would see the Mouse King again, she closed her eyes. But then she heard a knocking on her door, and the voice of the Nutcracker said, "My dear friend, I have conquered the Mouse King." Maria opened the door, and there stood the Nutcracker with a bloody sword and the crown of the Mouse King on his arm. "I want to thank you for helping me, Maria," said the Nutcracker. "Let me take you to my country and show you all the people you have helped." Maria was excited and followed the Nutcracker. They went into the playroom, and the Nutcracker opened the clock. It started winding round and round and round. And before Maria knew what was going on, she saw glitters, sparkles, and bright lights all around her. "Welcome to Candy Meadow," said the Nutcracker, "but we will continue further to the capital." Maria looked around in amazement. It smelled like sweets and candies. There were chocolates growing on trees. The flowers had beautiful ribbons as leaves. The river was made from lemonade. "Wow, thank you so much for bringing me here. It's magical," exclaimed Maria. People were coming up to them and thanking her for helping them. Then she tripped and started falling. Maria woke up and saw her mother standing next to her. "You have been sleeping for a long time, Maria." "Oh, Mother," said Maria, "the Nutcracker took me to the most amazing place." "Maria, don't start again. I can prove it. Look, here's the crown of the Mouse King." And she showed the little crown. Again, nobody believed her. She went to the playroom and grabbed the Nutcracker. "Oh, my dear Nutcracker, if you were real, I would love you no matter what," Maria said to him. Suddenly there was a loud knock on the door. Dr. Drosselmeyer's nephew had arrived. He walked straight up to Maria and whispered in her ear, "You broke my spell by telling me you love me. I will come back when you are older and marry you." And a few years later, he whisked her away. They got married and lived happily ever after in the Candy Kingdom. Oh, that is our last story today. Bit of a unique one, but I like more silly, magical stories sometimes too. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I helped you relax. I am most certainly loving Christmas so far, and I hope you're having an amazing year too. Have a good one. Happy holidays. See ya.